well, we've segued quite nicely into our fireside chat with Rovio. And I think obviously, well, thank you very much for joining us. I think
Thank you for inviting me.
And I'm going to just to explain to everyone, we're going to go through a gentle canter through the history of Rovio. We're going to have a little look about how you guys got started, how you managed to lift off and get towards that phase where you reached that really massive success, and maybe go off and talk a little bit about the future of the company. So the first question I've got is, can you tell us a little bit about how Rovio started? You know, how did you get off the ground as a mobile games company, and what was the industry like when you started out?
First of all, everything was carefully planned until today. Okay. So we knew that Angry Birds is going to come out a bit later, and we're going to make a huge success.
Okay, of course.
Of course. It actually started from assembly. So me and two of my fellow students, we were having a school project, and we did a multiplayer game over there. And then we saw the competition at assembly. And then we decided to participate in that. So it was sponsored by HP Bazaar. So Peter Westerbacka was there messing around. And then also Nokia was sponsoring for their new devices that they would like to have some new games on the platform. And then we decided to participate for that. And then eventually we actually won that competition. Okay. So it was all about having a real-time multiplayer over GPRS. Which was, we have to deal with 4-second lags and low heap memory, etc., etc. So, very interesting summer. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting the way you started out. Well, that's an ambitious idea, especially sort of 2004, 2005. We're talking, wow, mobile multiplayer over GPRS. You know, that's really impressive stuff. But I mean, when you initially started out, obviously you decided to found this company and you started off small. How did you survive in this early era of the industry? Because it was a tough industry to survive in. Let's not lie about that. So what did you have to do to keep your company afloat?
I would say that it didn't start from the money perspective. So it was a passion of mine. I've always wanted to do games. And if you look at the PC industry at that time, you had fairly big teams at that time already. And then we decided to put it together and just to execute the dream. And what I loved about mobile games was that you have fairly small teams. So I can actually affect to the product quite a lot. And that was kind of the inspiration. How to make money with the company, we didn't have a clue.
Yeah. But you knew how to make games, and you knew how to make a lot of these games, because I think the famed story is prior to Angry Birds, you had 51 games, I believe that
52.
52, I apologize, very inaccurate of me. But so you had these 52 games. I mean, what did you learn through the process of developing these games? I mean, obviously you would have started out with games that maybe perhaps were pretty basic, but as you built up your skill set, how did you use those games to build the skill set up necessary to create a really great mobile experience?
Yeah, well, we've been always on mobile, so you have to do different design than on PC games. And another great thing is when it comes to mobile gaming is that the projects are quite short, so there's a lot of learning put into that. So when you can have a lot of games, you will learn a lot. Yeah. And I was lucky enough to go through a lot of different game genres at the same time, and we were doing like so many different mistakes, but also learning a lot. And without those games, I would say that Angry Birds wouldn't be here.
So let's think about those games at the moment. I'd like to know, out of interest, you know, which games perhaps you thought were your best games and why they particularly helped your thinking, and at the same time, maybe some of the worst games, maybe the ones where you thought, I wish I hadn't touched that, and what you maybe learned. I mean, because I think that's interesting, because mobile gaming today, obviously people release their games and they soft launch them and they spend months tinkering with things and playing around. Yeah. And it's interesting to see, you know, by looking at these games, I'd like to see how maybe you had that process as well, iterating and learning new skills, but by creating different titles. So could you give us a few examples?
You know, we started from casual gaming, actually. The first game was super casual, although it had the multiplayer aspect in it. Then we did a few casual titles after that as well. Then we went more into the hardcore gaming, and what I learned from that is that you can put a lot of content into small package, because we had only like 64 kilobytes of jar size, so the package size it was fairly small. So maybe the key learning from there was how to compress your content into very small space. The best games, I really liked Bounce. That was one of my favorite games, and I remember I was super proud of that game as well. How to take 3D with soft rendering, but still have something fairly casual. It was kind of hard to control it, but in any case, that was one of the games that I'm really proud of. And also we did for EA we did few racing games. So their first 3D games for those platforms, and actually those games they sold a lot. Yeah. So we saw that with the skill set that we had, there is commercial potential behind it, and actually the market is fairly big at the same time. But then the worst games, they are my kids, so all of our games are beautiful.
All of your games are beautiful.
Yes.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. There's not many people with so many beautiful games as yourself, of course. But there was a particular game that was very beautiful when it was created, and that was, of course, Angry Birds.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that arrived. But one of the things that everyone talks about, there's this whole story about, I think an unfair thing where people say 52 failures and then a hit. That's not, of course, correct in how that happened. But I'd like to know about how you guys decided to come up with the idea of Angry Birds and why you decided to make it. Because from what I heard, I spoke to Matthew Wilson at Rovio, who's senior publishing manager, and he told me about how you managed to take advantage of a small break given to you when basically a company dropped out of doing a contract with you, and that allowed you some time to develop the game. Could you explain a bit more about how that came about, how Angry Birds started off?
Yeah, so we did a few games for iPhone before Angry Birds, and we got severely beaten. Wrong kind of controls, a lot of different kind of mistakes, and although we've been making games for mobile for years, but the touchscreen control, it required required different design, and I think through those games we learned how to make the best guess for a touchscreen device. Angry Birds itself, it started from one image drawn by Jaakko Iisalo, and it didn't have a proper game at that time, but the whole energy in that picture was just fascinating. But we didn't have time to do that, so we were running 4 or 5 projects at the same time, and then we decided to take some external partners to assist with the actual development, so we could free some time for the own IP, because that was something that we really wanted to do, and we saw that the smartphone volume might kick off, and actually at that time it was already that market was growing quite rapidly. So we freed some time from the project, so all that slack time we went and started developing Angry Birds, and we put a budget of 40K, and after the summer I think we were somewhere like 50K already, and we started thinking that should we take the other idea, because it seems that we are not going anywhere. Thank God we gave some more time for that. Yeah. And then Jaakko started polishing the game a lot, and all of a sudden we noticed that everybody was playing the game at the studios. Yeah. So we had the work for hire projects, but that game, all the slack time we had, we put all the effort into that. We also had like a master Excel sheet where we're comparing the scores. So I think people knew that there is something special in that project, put a lot of effort into that, and I think that was one of the factors that we decided to carry through.
So what turned it out of interest from, because you were saying about how you'd invested a lot into it, and then suddenly you realised that everyone's playing it. What was it, and what do you think was essential in the essence of Angry Birds that turned it from something that was just a project you were working on into this game that you suddenly were all playing, this addictiveness? What were the key elements of it, would you say?
If you look at the basic elements, I really like physics games. So you don't have to explain the rules. So you don't have to have any like extensive tutorials. And that was one of the lessons that we learned from many, many different games that we did. And then it's the polish in the game. Those small details. When you get that right, it just feels good.
Yeah.
I think that was it.
That was it. So
Yeah.
exactly. And so, I mean, obviously you realised that you had this great game on your hands, and you released it. But I think when you look at obviously it spent a year at the top of the American charts. This was like one of the major factors that really helped boost its success. Is that it managed to cement its position at the top of the App Store charts. But how do you? It took about a year between the actual release and that chart-topping year. There was a build-up time in which you turned it from a really great game into a really great game with this massive audience. You know, how did you go about that process of turning it from small game into massive hit?
I would say that it was fully organic. Yeah. We launched it in December 2009, and it took 6 months until it topped the US charts. Yeah. The first comments that we received from the audience was that I love the game, but we would like to have some more content. And that was kind of like untypical when it comes to releasing a product. Yeah. You make the product, you cash it in, and then you take the next one. And then we decided to just add more content and also form a connection between us and the fans as well. So they kind of felt that, hey, we are listening, and we were forming this very like unique relationship with the fans. And then we just kept doing that until we topped the charts.
Yeah, and when you got to the top of the charts, I think one of the, for me, what I recently found out, I went onto YouTube and listened to Chris Moyles, who's a very famous radio presenter in the BBC, basically going, I love Angry Birds. And that was one of the moments that he went and basically went forward to being this massive success in Britain, was this famous DJ talking about how he was addicted to it. But you didn't just stop there. You didn't just go, we've got an addictive game, let's leave it there. You went, we want to build a brand. And particularly Peter Vesterbacker, I think, has been one of the people who's been really credited with this. And I mean, you know, when I walk around, I've been in the last few months. I've been in Krakow. I've been here, obviously, of course, and recently I was in Berlin. And in each of those cities, I've seen kids wandering around with Angry Birds T-shirts on. I mean, how important has been that building of the brand and constructing it in a way that you've added not only just the original Angry Birds, but you've agreed deals with Star Wars, and today I've seen Angry Bird Transformers. So, you know, you've been really working hard to construct that. I mean, how important has that been to the success of Rovio? And why do you think other companies perhaps didn't pursue that route, even though it's worked quite so well for you? It's taken a long time, I think, for other people to catch up with you in that regard.
I think it was all about timing as well, because the market was growing all the time. So that was the reason that we were able to keep number one, because there was always fresh blood coming into the ecosystem. But very early on, we realized that, or we were like going back and forth that how do we build a brand? That was a dream. We wanted to build a strong brand. And we're thinking that, okay, if we drop the price to €1, will it make the brand less attractive? And then we realized that actually no, if the experience is good, if the product itself is super good. So let's get that piece working first. And then it was all about the question that how do we maximize the volume? And then another thinking that we had that when you're controlling the character itself, you're typically controlling the red bird. And if there's a good feeling related to that, and if you see that on the retail, or in retail, and if you remember that good feeling, it's very likely that people will also buy that physical product. So how did we manage to get it so big? I think it was partly timing, getting a good relationship with the fans, keeping the update cycle quite short, having the dialogue basically. Yeah. And then we were having like millions of downloads when Peter joined, and then he was putting the thinking to the next level. Yeah. So basically leaning forward a lot on many things.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the characters within Angry Birds, I mean, obviously there's Red, Terrence, Chuck. We've got these attachments to these characters, and you've strengthened it by using things like Toon TV, of course, where you can sort of see the Angry Birds episodes, and an Angry Birds film is mooted, it's in the works. But beyond that, you've also expanded into other genres of games. So recently, of course, you released Angry Birds Go last year, which is the kart racing game. Angry Birds Epic came out last week. I mean, how has that changed the dimensions within the Rovio when it comes to developing games? Because you're obviously branching out into different types of games. I mean, how does that affect your thinking as a company? Like, what is it in those games that changes the way that you make your games and design them?
Yeah, the question is that how do you make a brand long-lasting? And my only good example, I'm sure that there are many good examples, but one of the good examples is Mario. And I think it's a promise of good quality, and they are able to surprise time to time in a positive way. So how to keep it fresh? I believe that by making it interesting to keep up with the surprises, good surprises, that's the way to keep it fresh. And therefore, you have to do a lot of crazy things. You have to do mistakes to find the true surprise element in it.
Well, exactly. I think, I mean, because I guess I'm coming around to one of my last questions, and probably the last one of this little fireside chat, which has been fantastic. But you're now obviously a massive company that's making hundreds of millions of dollars each year in revenue, and there's loads of interesting things that you're doing as a company at the moment. You've got Rovio Stars, you've got your publishing program, and I think you're publishing Plunder Pirates, I believe, which is coming up soon. And at the same time, you've made a more concerted move towards adopting the free-to-play model.
Yeah.
And I guess the question that I'm wondering is, what's next for Rovio? Like, what are your plans? I mean, what are you hoping to achieve within the next couple of years, and how do you think you're going to get there? I guess that's the real question.
It's to release great products and services. I mean, it's just hard work, and also we have to be very humble because the market is it's changing and moving so rapidly. I kind of like being in an underdog position, so that keeps us hungry to deliver great things. I think there's no one silver bullet in the end. It's just hard work and also the desire to delight and surprise the fans.
Yeah. And so, well, it sounds to me that you've got, I mean, you've managed to build this company from nothing really and managed to turn it into this global brand. And I think there's a lot of people who are looking at that and looking at how to make their games really successful and how to make them stick in the mind of the player, not just when they're playing the game, but long beyond it while they're thinking about other things. And I think Rovio has been one of the companies that have really managed to do that spectacularly well. So thanks very much for joining us, Niklas.
Thank you.
Give him a round of applause for really playing shows.
Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Great.